Spoilers ahead. Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones was released in 2002 and was directed by George Lucas. Wow, this movie is so much better than I remember it being, and for what everyone gives it credit for. George improved almost every aspect of this movie from Episode 1. The score from John Williams is just so powerful. It speaks adventure when it needs to. It speaks elegance. It speaks longing for romance. It speaks danger when it needs to. There's just so much greatness in this film. George expanded on all the groundwork he laid out in Episode 1. We get to see more of the galaxy at large. We get to see more of the planets from his imagination and the conflicts going on between them. George expanded on his choreography in this one as well. If you all thought the Darth Maul fight was something, that's almost nothing compared to how much amazing choreography goes into this one. We get to see an all-out fight between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, the Jedi in action, a whole army of Jedi against the Separatist droids. We get to see Mace Windu in action. We get to see Yoda in an all-out lightsaber duel with Count Dooku. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm getting a little ahead of myself just because I'm so excited to talk about this movie. Okay, so the movie starts out with a decoy for the now Senator Amidala getting killed in an assassination attempt. I'm going to pause for a second and say that I had a laugh out loud moment when she dies, because she's talking to Padme, the who she's decoying for, and her dying breath, she says something like, "I have failed you." And it's like, no, you actually did your job. You actually did die for her. That's kind of what you were supposed to do. But anyway, back to the review. So, Obi-Wan and his Padawan Anakin are then tasked with protecting the Senator during her stay on Coruscant, which then turns into an investigation on who the killer is against Obi-Wan's previous wishes. After a thrilling ship chase scene throughout Coruscant, Obi-Wan and Anakin are able to track the killer down to a bar in the underground of Coruscant. They catch her, and she turns out to be a bounty hunter by the name of Zam Wesell, who is also a changeling, so she can change her appearance as well as the sound of her voice. Before Zam can tell them who hired her to assassinate the Senator, she is assassinated herself by a mysterious jetpacked figure. This sets up the two main storylines of the film. First, plays off a mystery theme kind of movie. Obi-Wan plays a detective type who investigates the dart Zam was shot by, and he uncovers a big ol' separatist plot. And guys, the first probably like 40 minutes of this movie just truly shows how much George expanded on his groundwork laid out in the first film. He shows us more of this Republic capital planet. We get to see how Anakin and Obi-Wan have grown in the 10 years since the time has passed from The Phantom Menace. We get to see the Jedi living and interacting in this Republic era. We get to see a Jedi library. We get to see younglings training in the Jedi Temple. So the second storyline played throughout this movie is sort of a romance type theme between Anakin and Padme. So after 10 years of simply dreaming about her, Anakin is given the opportunity to become Padme's bodyguard on her home planet, Naboo. And even through his cringy dialogue, he is able to make her fall for him. They bond during their paradise stay on Naboo, away from everything. But after this, they travel to Anakin's home planet of Tatooine, back to Mos Espa, to track down Anakin's mother, who he's been having some troubling dreams about. We get to see what has become of his old slave master Watto, who tells them that his mother Shmi has been sold and then married to a man by the name of Lars. Sound familiar? Then the three of them, Anakin, Padme, and R2, travel to the Lars homestead out near Mos Eisley to kind of figure out what's going on. Turns out that his mother's been kidnapped by Tusken Raiders. And we get to see just how dangerous and savage these monstrous creatures are. Anakin goes to the village, he finds his mother has been raped by them, and in a heartbreaking scene, she dies in his arms. John Williams does such an excellent job in this scene. He touches us with heartbreak as Shmi dies in Anakin's arms, and then, as the camera shows Anakin's face turn from sadness to anger, Williams conducts the strings into a swirling tornado of conflict before Anakin slaughters the entire village. He travels back to the Lars homestead with the body of his mother, which, by the way, it's super cool to get to see the Lars homestead when Owen and Beru are younger. But then Anakin buries his mother. They then hear that Obi-Wan has been captured by the fallen Jedi, Count Dooku. They take C-3PO with them to go on a rescue mission. Against the Jedi Council's orders, by the way. The scene where Dooku has Obi-Wan captured and they're just talking is very interesting, by the way. It's clear that he's lying about a lot to Obi-Wan. I mean, he says that his goal is to destroy the Sith, but he actually is a Sith. But he brings up an interesting point. Would Qui-Gon have stayed with the Jedi Order had he still been alive? In Episode 1, it is evident that Qui-Gon sees that the Jedi Order has become disillusioned with who the Jedi really were. They've been tainted with all their policies and politics and rules, and they've just drifted further and further away from who they were really supposed to be. So would he have stayed with the Order, or would he have joined the Separatists? I don't know, it's interesting to think about. The plot is so intricately woven throughout this whole trilogy. I'm so glad George had an original creative vision for his prequel trilogy. Instead of just kind of showing us the Empire again, we get to see what led to the creation of the Empire. We get to see the furthering of Darth Sidious's sinister plan. He ordered a clone army from the Kaminoans 10 years prior under the guise of a dead Jedi, Sifo Dyas. Then he raised Kamino from the Jedi archives to make it that much more difficult for anyone to be on his trail. 10 years later, when the clone army is completed, he pulls his strings as both the Chancellor of the Republic and the secret leader of the Separatists for emergency powers to be given to him so that he can start his war. We really get to see how powerful the Jedi are during this period, in many instances. And it's mentioned a couple times that the Sith Lord has been able to cloud their vision of the Force, which shows the audience just how powerful the Sith Lord really is. So guys, we get to see the start of the Clone Wars, first mentioned by Luke in the original Star Wars, and it is just so awesome. Freaking Jedi leading armies of clones, like, what? We get to see the origins of the famous bounty hunter, Boba Fett, and it's cool to see just how interconnected George made these two trilogies. In this one, we see in the space battle between Jango and Obi-Wan that Jango hides and waits for Obi-Wan to exit an asteroid and then chases after him after that. Later in Episode 5, Boba pulls the exact same move against Han. Another instance of this interconnectedness, which I had never noticed before, I had seen it this time, happens at the end of the film when Yoda is dueling Count Dooku. Dooku makes him decide between saving Obi-Wan and Anakin or stopping Count Dooku. Yoda chooses to save his fellow Jedi and Dooku gets away. At the very end of the movie, Obi-Wan mentions that it wouldn't have been a victory had it not been for the assistance of the clones. To which Yoda replies, "A victory? He doesn't see it as a victory. Dooku got away. The war's begun." In Episode 5, he urges Luke to finish his training and stop the Empire, as opposed to go to saving his friends, because he's seen what's happened when you choose to save your friends over stopping evil. He lived 3 years through the Clone War, saw the rise of the Empire, and lived 22 years in exile on Dagobah. But anyway, back to episode 2. I just want to mention a few more awesome moments and I'll stop gawking over this movie. The arena scene is just so good. We get to see Anakin and Padme's relationship truly begin. Padme expresses her love for Anakin, and they kiss as they ride to their perceived death. Then, when they get out in the arena, they meet Obi-Wan, who is tied up, and he greets them with some nice sarcasm. Then we get to see the three of them attempt to try and survive against these monsters that are sent after to try and kill them. And I'm going to mention that during this, and the following battle with the Jedi versus the droids, Padme is able to hold her own. I mean, she's just a senator. She doesn't have a lightsaber or use of the Force. She's just got a blaster. But, I mean, she holds her own against these monsters and battle droids. So, I gotta give her credit for that. R2-D2 and C-3PO's friendship really gets to begin here. We get to see some of that classic back and forth between the two, which is always so entertaining. The sound effects in this movie are just amazing. Such great sound editing all around. Visual effects, total improvement from the first. It's crazy to see just how much CGI had improved in those 3 years in between the release dates. The acting is much better in this one. Didn't say it's great, but it's an improvement over the first. And Ewan McGregor really just owns his role of Obi-Wan. I will also say, I don't think Hayden Christensen does as bad of a job as everyone says he does. George wrote his character as a 19-year-old Jedi Knight. He's not going to be perfect. He's not going to be the most mature guy ever. He's cocky. He takes on Dooku alone. He's still dealing with a lot of emotions. I think people just expected a different role out of him. Like, I'm not saying he did a great job acting, but I think people just expected a different role and judged him on his acting job for the role George wrote him for. By the way George shot that lightsaber duel between Anakin and Dooku was just fabulous. The lighting, the edits, the way that the lightsabers are illuminating on their faces as they're dueling. It's just great. Also a plus for this one, way less Jar Jar, which means way less stupid, unnecessary jokes. Oh yeah, there are also absolutely beautiful pieces of scenery too, which is largely due to the CGI used in this movie. Real quick, I also did just want to mention this other parallel I found between episode 2 and 5. Here's Anakin falling from hundreds of feet in episode 2, and here's Luke falling from hundreds of feet in episode 5. Okay, so even though I'm a prequel defender, I am still going to address the problems I saw with the movie. Most notably, the dialogue is just simply stupid. It sounds like robots are talking. This is mostly in the first act. It gets a little bit better. Natalie Portman was just kind of hard to watch in that first act. She just looks like a robot talking. When she leaves Coruscant, she gets a little bit better. But, yeah, that dialogue is rough. The scene where Anakin and Padme are talking by the fireplace is super cringy. And again, that's mostly due to the crappy dialogue they were given, but also some poor acting. So guys, I got some comments on my review for the episode 1 that I had a lot of problems with the movie, but yet I rated it very highly. I gave it a 9 out of 10. And I'd like to address that here and explain my reasoning for it. Even though these movies have some technical problems, there's so much greatness within them, just from the story, the characters we're given, the world that's created and shown to us, the action, the CGI, the sound, everything else that's great about them more than makes up for it. The problems become minor compared to just how amazing the rest of the movie is. That being said, gonna give this movie a 9.5 out of 10. Guys, I really don't remember enjoying this movie so much. I had such a blast watching it. I was invested so much in it the entire way through. Please let me know what you think of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, in the comments below. Maybe how you'd rank it compared to the other Star Wars movies. If you hate the prequels, that's fine. I'd still like to hear your feedback on it. If you love them, please comment down below. Tell me you're on my side too. Otherwise, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for my next review.